The country of Turkey is in crisis. As a target of terrorism from both ISIS and militant separatist Kurds, and with refugees streaming in from war-torn Syria, Turkey's geopolitical reality is complex. Dr. Zeynep Tenger, a Barry English professor from Turkey, says that intense fear-mongering by extremists and the increasing instability of Turkey's leading Islamic-based party, the AKP, are contributors to Turkey's turmoil.
One thing is what you hear in the media: terrorism, bombs, explosions in rallies, clubs, and public squares. These have really increased, and there's a lot of media coverage of them, but there is also a very significant political crisis.
Dr. Sabah Çolakolu, a professor of management at Barry who is also from Turkey, says the country's location is significant in its proximity to other volatile nations.
Historically, because Turkey has been a democratic and secular country since 1923, we're not really Middle Eastern, or we're not really an Islamic country the way the rest of the world perceives Middle East. We're also part of Europe, but we're not European because it's a 99% Muslim country. We don't belong to the Christian club of Europe, and they will never accept us to the European Union. So we are in this very unique geopolitical situation, surrounded by countries with huge troubles.
Dr. Michael Papazian, a philosophy professor at Barry, says that part of what makes Turkey's situation so difficult to grasp is the sheer number of vastly differing ideologies in play.
It's just there are so many different groups of people with so many different interests, and there's a lot of also sort of outside influence, and so they've kind of added to the volatility, whether they anticipated that or not, I don't know. But in essence, it's just really I guess you would call it a perfect storm of just violence and strife at this point.
Papazian, who is Armenian from both sides of his family, says a decline of faith in secular ideology and the emergence of a more radical form of Islam has led to a hostile environment for Christians and other religious groups.
We're looking at a situation where the Middle East will be virtually depopulated of Christians in the next few years if there isn't some sort of radical change. The Middle East is in desperate need of some tolerance and understanding. They don't seem to have very much of that.
Tenger, who is born and raised in Turkey, says she does not predict a civil war to occur as it has in Syria. Rather, she sees an increase of divisiveness, much like what is happening in the United States.
What I see is a discursive, hate-filled, polarized environment.
Papazian says the Trump administration's potentially closer ties with Russia, Bashar al-Assad's recent victories in Syria, and a bolstering of power in Iran as a result are all factors that make any kind of predictions speculative at most.
Now, it used to be considered to be a kind of a hopeful case of an Islamic-based, even though it's secular, a predominantly Muslim democracy. It looks like it's less and less of a democracy every day, so we don't know. It's interesting to see what will happen in the next few years.
Çolakolu says that despite the tension, she will continue traveling there with her two sons to visit family and friends.
And I'm trying to, calm them down, and I tell them, we're not going to go to the crowded or central places. So they're worried. You can't live with fear.
Tenger says that though the general atmosphere of disquiet is hard to escape, there is also a sense of normalcy.
When you're sitting in a fish restaurant and having a glass of wine and having some calamari, you're not really concentrated on the political crisis.
Juxtapose the scene of a nice dinner out with what can happen in any major airport, but perhaps especially Istanbul's Ataturk, and the reality of Turkey's volatility hits home.
Way to Istanbul this summer, we were at the airport maybe 10 days or 15 days after the attack at the airport, and then we were in a very crowded line for passport control. So there's a lot of noise, people are talking, complaining, sweating, all that stuff. It's very crowded, very big, and then suddenly someone's luggage drops on the floor and makes a boom sound. And suddenly the whole airport goes quiet and silent, kind of turning their heads, trying to figure out where that noise is coming from. So you can tell that, people are unconsciously horrified by the events.
With Viking Fusion, I'm Sarah O'Carroll.